Welcome to Unpicking Dissonance, a podcast brought to you by the Leeds UK music collective known as Fold. I'm Seth Moshewitz, the host of this podcast and the founder of Fold. I'm never quite sure about founder. It sounds a bit like the head of a cult. It'll do for now. If you're new here, this podcast is about looking past the stories and narratives we're fed by those in power and trying to understand what's actually going on. We're speaking to many different people about how they deal with the cognitive dissonance resulting from that process and how they confront those narratives. These are all people with beautiful, singular minds who think differently and tend to experience that cognitive dissonance more sharply than perhaps the average person does. The idea is to bring all of these people together in one place in order to form a more coherent map of our shared reality. Leading into today's episode, two of the key aims of this podcast, and all of our work as Fold, are amplifying perspectives that challenge entrenched power structures and giving a voice to those who rarely get to have one, but greatly deserve it. We're more interested in people who have struggled to succeed within this system than those who probably already have a platform. We greatly admire people who are unashamedly true to themselves, even when that comes at a disadvantage. Today we are excited to introduce our first ever guest on this podcast, a person to whom all of the above definitely applies, Andrew Karras, known to us affectionately as Drew. Before we start, we want to talk to you directly for a moment. We make this podcast because we believe the voices and ideas you hear on it matter. We run workshops because we've seen what happens when young people who've never been given access to music production suddenly have it. We make music as Fold because we can't not. None of this is particularly lucrative, but all of it is worth doing. If you've been listening and you want to help us keep going and go further, we've made that as easy as we can. From $2 a month on Patreon or £3 on Bandcamp, that's it. If you want to go deeper, our $10 and £10 tiers mean your name gets read out here on this show every episode, which we will do with genuine gratitude, not as a formality. On that note, we'd like to thank our first £10 a month member on Bandcamp, Edward McSheffrey, who is a long-standing Fold supporter. Cheers, Eddie. Your support means a lot to us. We're also building toward a print zine, something physical to replace the newsletters and social media posts we're stepping away from. We'll launch it once we hit 50 members across the two platforms, so every membership gets us a little closer. If any of this resonates with you, we'd love to have you with us. You can find us at patreon.com/foldfm and fold.bandcamp.com. Both links are in the show notes. Thank you, honestly. Now let's get on with it. Full disclosure, Drew and I are very old friends, though now estranged by continental drift. We first met at the State University of New York at Stony Brook, which is out on Long Island. He is a little younger than me, which made a bigger difference in 1996 than it does now. I had just moved over from the Netherlands to start university there, so I was a little on the exotic side compared to the average student at the time, and clearly an outcast of a different order. At 16, Drew was already a precocious, gifted young thinker, poet, songwriter, and a voracious reader. He'd snuck into the university before he was even eligible to apply, just to get onto the campus and see what he could absorb. He too was an outcast seeking other outcasts. We instantly bonded over a shared love of music in particular, all things countercultural, and a similarly dark sense of humor. We used to get up to all kinds of shenanigans like writing a theme tune for The Lemon Show, a TV series that doesn't exist. Although we don't really engage on these terms in our friendship, I came from a middle-class background with considerably more privilege than Drew and his objectively working-class background. Yet somehow, due to our exposure at key points in our development to certain people, cultures, and communities, we both ended up with a taste of the best of what humanity has to offer. I don't want to speak for Drew, but it is this, above all, that compels me to fight for a world in which everyone can have what we had. Drew is now an accomplished artist, writer, and activist, though he doesn't advertise it and doesn't bask in any limelight. I can definitely say that his exceptional work over many decades has always been driven by a deep sense of our shared humanity. Over roughly the same time period that I've been doing this work with Fold, Drew was deeply involved in an activist art project called AK Rockefeller, together with my brother Jed, who will be coming on this podcast to do his own episode in future, which I'm very much looking forward to. And this project does have a lot of similarities with Fold, and it's one of the main focal points of the conversation with Drew. So I thought it would be best to read an article from Dancing Turtle, written in 2014, that does a very good job of introducing AK Rockefeller. The title is AK Rockefeller, Art, Identity, and the Struggle for West Papua. The name alone demands attention. AK Rockefeller, part art collective, part news platform, part cultural resistance movement, takes its identity from one of the most remarkable origin stories in contemporary activism. Michael Rockefeller, son of New York Governor and U.S. Vice President Nelson Rockefeller, disappeared off the coast of West Papua in 1961 during an anthropological expedition. The official verdict was drowning. The collective's founding mythology suggests something else entirely, that Michael survived, was taken in by the Asmat people, and that AK Rockefeller is the voice of his descendant, raised in the Asmat region and carrying the weight of both worlds. Whether one takes this as literal biography or as a deliberate and provocative artistic construct, the effect is the same. A name that collapses the distance between the world's most powerful dynasties and one of its most forgotten peoples, and asks uncomfortable questions about what the West owes West Papua. The work that has emerged under that name is serious and sustained. Spanning music, visual art, film, photography, and journalism, AK Rockefeller operates as one of the most consistent English-language platforms documenting the West Papuan independence movement and the systematic human rights abuses carried out by the Indonesian state. If you want to go deeper into that, I recommend reading the full article on Dancing Turtle. The link's in the show notes. I do have to apologize for the poor audio quality at the other end of the line. Poor Drew was forced to use his phone, and he was recording at our mutual friend John's house out on Long Island. Drew also has significant ongoing health problems and was particularly tired on this occasion, but I think he did a great job anyway, and his humor is as infectious as ever. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Welcome, Drew.
Hey, dude.
Hey.
Hey, Seth. Haven't seen you in a long time.
It's been way too long. You told me last time, but I've completely forgotten now. Was it 2013?
Yes, 2013. Because I remember specifically the Trayvon Martin trial was happening.
Yeah, that's how I anchor things too. I have no sense of time unless I can anchor it to an event.
Yeah, and there's always like something, you know.
So I'm recording this in Leeds in the north of England. Where the hell are you right now?
I am in Woodmere on Long Island, New York. It's on the line of the rich and the poor section of town. I mean, nothing's that poor here, but across the road is where all the mansions begin, and this house is just big. It's my friend's house, and he used to work for Twitter. He was laid off in the big Elon Musk takeover of Twitter.
I chatted to him a lot when he was working for Twitter. Ironically, he had these little yellow birds. Does he still have the birds?
Yeah. He's got, well, one of them died, and he's got another one. He adopted one.
Aw.
And they're really great, actually. Like, they have full reign of the house. So they just sit anywhere. They'll eat anything they want. Like, I'll give them a strand of spaghetti off my plate. They're very sweet. And Ghost loves to chase them around. And they love to dive bomb Ghost.
Ghost is the dog.
Yes, he's my dog. My first pet.
I was impressed at how well he trained the birds. Like, they were able to do a lot of stuff that I didn't know birds could do.
It's surprising because they're really emotive. Like, they do have personalities, and they, they tell you their wants, and they're fun. They like to play. They like to be alone, so they're like fully fledged, conscious beings, just, they're your friends.
Fully fledged fledglings. Oh, that was bad. I'm always trying to find the worst pun or play on words.
Who's the old kind of crank from 60 Minutes back in the day? Rupert, maybe something. But you know who I'm talking about, right?
I think so, yeah.
He would always come on and be like, what's the deal with, asparagus? Why does it have to be so expensive? But, John's dad bumped into him a long time ago when he was in college, and he had read something, that guy had written before he became a news anchor. And he's, when he met him, he said, oh, I liked your writing. And, he said, what did you read? And he says the book. He goes, you do go far back. And he was kind of impressed that he knew, like, his old thing. And he said, what are you? He said, I'm a fledgling writer. He said, young man, never describe yourself as a fledgling anything. And that's always stuck in my head, that whenever anybody says fledgling, I'm a fledgling lacrosse player, He's like, just own it. Say, you're a lacrosse player. And that actually comes into me a lot, too, because I used to be embarrassed to call myself a musician or a guitar player because I don't have, actual training really, just what I picked up on my own. And for years, I didn't know how to tune a guitar, like let alone play one. And but I still made, and recorded a lot of music. Some of it bad, but some of it surprisingly wasn't so bad. And I think it's a cool thing to do, to just make your own art and not like worry about it, and to find something you like about it and just keep going with that. And it helped out later when I actually needed to do things for people as part of certain political art projects, such as AK Rockefeller, which took up a good 10 years of my life at least.
So the work that you do is in many ways similar to what Fold does. Can you talk a bit about what it is that you do and how that came about?
Yeah, in terms of being a multimedia project, yes, like bands make music, they make a video, but the video's mostly like a promotional tool. And, it can be its own piece of art, but rarely do we think of it as such. But in terms of being a politically focused band that makes music for political reasons and makes video to accompany that message, those messages that are in the music, it's sort of asking more of the viewer than just like passive entertainment. Although, it can be quite entertaining in the sense that it asks questions and it stimulates, thinking. The intent of AK Rockefeller was to be a art collective where people with diverse voices from all around the world would get together to talk about human rights issues and share their artwork that was focused on those issues just in their local area, and whatever they wanted, like whatever their focus of study was. And I haven't given this spiel in a long time. I used to be able to rattle this stuff off.
I know this stuff can be really hard to come up with in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, indeed, that's like the toughest part of the whole thing to me. I'd rather like write the articles, do the research, make the collages, and participate in the music. Although the music was mostly Jed's angle, but conceptually, talk about how the music should be and what it should include and stuff. It was always, or structurally, say like loop this or this is a good idea. But the hardest part was to just describe it to people.
I have the same problem. I've always had the same problem.
And Jed was good at manifestos, but I felt like his manifestos were a little too erudite or something. Like he would get very intellectual when writing his manifestos that I didn't think like the average person. I was always very concerned about that the message would be weird, and I knew it would be weird, but that if you just took 2 seconds to look at it, that like any average person would be able to hop right in and to participate. And in the early days of Twitter, it was very easy to do that because there was just a sort of social media freedom that doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it was just because it was the early days and the idiots hadn't arrived yet, but it seemed that everybody on Twitter was cool, no matter what your like political leaning was. Everybody was like tolerant of each other. To me, it's only been like the last 10 years, 8 years since like social media really went off the rails and just became like a shouting match. But in those earliest days, like you could just talk to anybody around the world, and there was so many artists and musicians and people interested in politics, ready to learn about all different issues from around the world. And one of the things about AK Rockefeller was that we wanted to show that there's not like 100 different issues around the world. It's all really one issue. It's all, and I'm not trying to be like spiritual with it, like we are all one, but just basic human rights. When you take care of people's basic human rights and actually do it, like provide clean water, provide, stable housing, medicine, the whole nine, like everything gets better. And where things fall apart, they're just not allowed to be better. Things just settle into like, like a cycle of poverty, like in many places in Africa, where you just don't see a way out. But like little by little, the world should probably be taking care of these places. One of the places I think, Europe, when I look at the Ukraine war, in the early 2000s, I was hoping that the Ukraine would become part of the European Union at some point. At first provisionally, like Poland did, and eventually become a full member. But when they weren't even able to kind of get the process started, I knew there would be a war, that Russia would take that as a sign of weakness, that the place was in play. And they had, their reasons to go in, and Europe is sort of just playing this waiting game. It's a proxy war, so of course they're supporting the Ukraine, but only Ukrainians have to die. So it's like a question of how many Ukrainians have to die before Europe feels bad about it and does something better, like actually stands up to Russia.
Unlimited, it would seem.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's bleak. It is bleak.
Can I tell you a story just between me and you?
Sure.
So me and Jed got on this Australian podcast, and you can imagine the time difference between Vancouver, New York, and Australia, and coordinating that is not the easiest thing to do. So I got word from Jed that the interview was canceled. So I took a bunch of fucking Vicodin pills, and I just planned to like ride out the rest of the night. Then all of a sudden, an hour later, he's like, no, it's back on. So I ended up doing this, like totally blitzed out of my mind, like to such a degree, like I was embarrassed, and I was like talking about Nelson Rockefeller and trying to put this, explain Rockefeller, AK Rockefeller, but just trying not to show my hand, that I was really on junk. And it was like the middle of the night, and I hadn't been sleeping because I was waiting to do this interview. But it actually came out fine. So, and then they worked with us for a lot of years, and I'm sure if I hopped back into it, I would be right on top of it too. The guy's wife was really into Shakespeare, so we started throwing like really deep Shakespeare references into the articles we were writing.
Awesome. Can I leave that bit in, that story, or do you want me to take that one out?
Yeah, you could leave those in. Those guys are way cool. They were called Black and Black. They're still around. They have podcasts, and the guy's a lawyer from Australia, Aboriginal guy.
Cool.
And they do a lot of serious work, like just for Aboriginal rights, and in the in the courthouses, and in the Congress there. He's got connections and things. He's I always like separate real activism from, and maybe it's my inability to maybe I have imposter syndrome or something, because ultimately I dropped out of college and I'm not quote unquote educated, but I always see like people in organizations, I say that they're the real activists, but I think the average person can do a lot. There's all sorts of like little nooks and crannies that issues around the world, little niche issues that are very important to some number of people, and all people are looking for is like somebody to research a topic or transcribe something or to translate something from one language to another. Like we used to get reports in Indonesian, and these were like firsthand eyewitness reports of human rights violations, and we'd get pictures and descriptions. But like I don't speak Indonesian, so I had to go on translators, and I would like translate it on 4 different translators online, like not just Google Translate, but just to make sure that I was like understanding the context properly as best I could, and to compare what seemed to be the best translation, and kind of cobble that together. And little things like that. I mean, like news just doesn't hit the Western world if it doesn't get, if it's not written in English or one other major language or two. So, there could be all sorts of, little issues around the world that nobody would ever know about. And we just had on the website, which is still there. I mean, we have a submit documents, kind of a button So you could, send pictures and documents or any, evidence of any kind, even local newspaper articles, things like that. So we used to get all kinds of stuff like from just random people that were just looking to share it with somebody. Like they found maybe they thought we could help them somehow, but it's amazing because you wouldn't believe how many people out there are connected in a little dangerous spot of the world, and they're just looking for like a better day.
Absolutely. Well, you're not a fledgling activist anymore, Drew.
Well, in terms of that too, I've learned a lot because I got so obsessed with this, and it started being like detrimental to my health, and I have had a lot of health issues in recent years just because of how crazy obsessive I was about all this stuff. But it was only because we could have used an extra hand sometimes. I mean, a lot of people helped us, but at times it was just like me and Jed, like, and getting reports or like talking to people who are like high up in the Papua movement, like the decision makers, and like, just basically helping them do. We always wanted it to be their movement, so at one point we were asked to take over the social media of the main Papuan organization. I don't know why I'm trying to be sort of anonymous here, but we were asked to take charge of the social media of the West Papua Action Network, and that's a pretty big group. But I refused to do it because I felt like it should be a Papuan, to make those judgment calls that need to be made in that kind of work, and I wanted to help the movement, but I didn't want to be the movement. And that's exactly, the main point of it is like, it's not about me. Like, I don't care to win any glory or respect or even money. I mean, it wasn't that, financially advantageous to take part in these projects. Although, we did make a little bit of money off of it just to survive, but, just selling like trinkets and merch and things like that. But mostly we just, gave out a lot of stuff for free because, just to get the message out there.
Yeah, it's like once you see the work that needs doing, you just do it. And there's a lot of work that needs doing.
There was, one of our primary collaborators, a guy named Zashnane in Thailand and Malaysia. He was a writer, a kind of a poet, really. He would write these poetic blog posts after he would like come back from a 12-hour day of handing out water to refugees, And he was always like had his hands on, he was always walking through the scummiest parts of any city he was living in. And he would just take these cool photographs of just little tiny moments of kindness and just kind of show how people live and kind of have a slightly absurdist edge to it. And, he wrote these poetic blog posts that were interesting. They didn't really go over well, but to him, like he was an English as a second language guy, he was just sort of interested in kind of experimenting with a second language of words to use. And yeah, it was like a little pretentious, but I think if you squint your eyes a little, you could see that he was just having fun with the form and kind of trying to find words for the kind of things he sees on a daily basis and kind of share that with people. And I always thought it was funny that, these kind of college educated kids would scoff at that and so kind of thumb their noses, just kind of sniff like, oh, what's this gross stuff? Somebody once said, oh, there's so much good content on this site, but that poetry is so garbage, and I always thought that was, a bad reading of it, even though I understood why their initial thought would be that.
I've got this question. This will be a stumper. So one of our core assumptions is that stories form the cognitive scaffolding of our reality, which I think is indisputable. And then in the course of our lives, we each form our own core stories about ourselves. So can you give us a sense of what your core story is?
Okay, I mean, that's, I suppose, kind of simple to describe, although I'm not really ever asked that question.
I don't think many people are.
Well, I'll go back to the beginning. I had very low self esteem growing up because I had a narcissistic mother, and she was very domineering, and you just could not win with this woman, and she wanted what she wanted when she wanted it. And my parents ended up getting divorced, and strangely, for the time and place, my father got custody of me and my brother, the kids, and I haven't seen my mother since. I think I saw her one more time after the divorce, and she basically blocked me, but in real life. So I always had this like cloud hanging over me that I just felt like I was a second class citizen in my own life. That I had my own little like world, and I would somewhere in high school I had a really cool art teacher who I still talk to this day on Facebook. She's in her 80s, and she kind of I guess saw something in me in terms of the arts, and I sort of made art part of my life at that point. And she was the first one that encouraged me to write because she thought I said funny things in class, and maybe I could write a poem or a story or something incorporating these funny thoughts that I had, and that sounded cool. And I got a lot of validation from her and some of the other teachers. And that's basically where you popped in, Seth. I met you somewhere in the middle of all that. My senior year of high school, I made this big art installation for the art show, and I plopped it in the library. I made a movie. Well, basically, it was a big box that people could sit in, and there was a television inside, and they would watch a movie, and there was like a light show that my friend programmed, who was taking like electronic classes. And it was just this really cool installation. I didn't even know what an installation was at that time. Like, I just thought it would be a cool project to make. And, it got a lot of praise and stuff from, kids and teachers would always come up to me because it was in the library for a few months because I just couldn't be fucked to tear it apart and bring it home. So it just sort of sat there for a long time. And, so it was this kind of weird anachronistic thing, like it had just popped in from the future or something, and it's just sitting in the library. No one's allowed to touch it. And so in terms of my core being, as that relates to my core being, so art became, I don't know, this kind of thing that I just started taking it seriously, and I wanted to, read the great classic books and study painters and what all the like big name artists out there. I wanted to understand what their deal was and why they did the things they did, and like I wanted it not to be boring. Like people go to museums and they get bored because you've seen one, you've seen them all. But I really wanted to be like, why is this well known? What's the deal with this? And I always kind of felt stupid at it, like everybody else either didn't care or got it right away. But I'm here to tell you that's not true. That you can slowly acquire good sense in the arts, and you can, begin to differentiate and get different things from different artists at different times, and work your way further into the past where even the people in the past seem like they're real people and not like a like a Hollywood movie like Gladiator where they're just these they might as well be aliens. If you're not if you're not into history, people from 1,000 years ago are like, what's the difference between that and Game of Thrones, but really all those things that happened in the world, you could, backtrack so many issues to those major incidents, to those major like windfalls of war, those major battles that went one way instead of the other, and you could slowly understand why things are unfolding the way they are. I mean, even looking at art, just different art movements popping up in different places with like different themes that they're focused on, tells you a little bit about the politics of the time and what was funny at the time. And it just makes history seem real and makes you feel a part of the movement of history. And even studying the past, just these little moments, you begin to appreciate people's contributions that kind of aren't remembered, like these random people that must have been there, but we were not sure why or how. You know that that the average dude does make a difference, like, and in the right place, right time can make a major difference. And you kind of have to fight for the world you want to live in. And nobody's nobody owes you anything, and nobody's gonna like fight your fight for you. So if you believe in it, and one thing I would say, we use the word fight, but I think in a large extreme these days, people are too ready to fight because they're like on their last straw, like they're even like fighting, to spite their own life, it doesn't there's no like logic to it anymore. People are just feeling destructive, like there's something wrong. They don't know how to interact with it or fix it or even what it exactly is, but they're just ready to go to war. I think that's a kind of dangerous thing these days. I think things aren't as bad as we would like them to be, because everybody wants their fight to be the most important fight and to mean so much, but it's really the little things that can make a big difference. And it's talking and, like, it sounds stupid, but, like making a friend, making a connection on a small agreement is better than, debating a large disagreement. Make a small connection first. Find one reason to come a little closer, to quote the Big Red commercial.
That points to the cognitive dissonance everybody's experiencing to some degree, that needing to fight and not really understanding why. A lot of that is about cognitive dissonance and just how you live with it on a daily basis.
I am kind of divided, double-edged, because I did spend a lot of time in Poland throughout my life, which added up, amounts to a few years at least. And, most of it was when I was growing up on summer vacations when I was a kid, which, when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, and you're going to Poland every year for a couple months, those are important months. So, to my friends in elementary school, I was just a non-factor all summer. And then I got back like a week before school would end. Luckily, I had a lot of friends whose parents were Portuguese, so some of them had a similar experience of going back to Portugal for the summer. So we would meet back and, being in another country changes you, and speaking another language changes you. And at that time, it was the mid '80s, so it was the Soviet era. So even being an American in coming through customs at those times was like a different ordeal. There was, a dance happening every time we went through customs. And, those were the days of rationing. And my mother's sister had never left Poland, so we used to stay there. My grandma was there. I had my father's family lived on a farm out there. So we used to go, we used to see. I mean, this place was straight out of like Little House on the Prairie. Like they had a well, they didn't have a television. And that's like where my grandmother grew up. Eventually, later on, she took my dad into Warsaw when he was born in the middle of World War II in 1943 in Warsaw. So, but, going back to Poland, like, seeing the soldiers on the streets, which when 9/11 happened, America started putting soldiers on the streets in New York City. And, it was kind of weird because it reminded me of Soviet Poland. Like, that was the last time I had seen that. Soldiers patrolling, doing basic patrols. in an urban environment. But yeah, that, when you speak of like my core being, being this sort of Polish changeling or something, I've never felt really part of either country. Like I feel like an outsider in either place, but people seem to not really get that or don't think it's that important. But a lot of them have just never left their home state. So like how different could it be? But like my household was pretty Polish growing up. Like my parents spoke predominantly Polish. My brother didn't speak English when he started kindergarten, so he had to learn from the top down. Then they corrected that mistake and started teaching me English much earlier. So I benefited from that, but my brother was always having trouble catching up, let's say, to other kids. So, like, and just having those, seeing the other side of the world behind the Iron Curtain really opened up my eyes and made me kind of politically conscious earlier than most kids would be. I remember having long discussions with my grandmother rented a room to an old dude named Henry, who was kind of like my grandfather. I considered him my grandfather in those days, but he wasn't really related. But I would go up there when I was at my grandmother's, up to his little apartment, and we would talk for like hours about history and World War II, which he fought in, and he would tell me stories about this and that. But I remember when the Gulf War started. We had like a hours long conversation on the phone about just everything that was going on and what it could mean and where it could lead. And, so from an early age, I was always very kind of curious about how these events and why these events went down, And oddly, I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist. I see way too many conspiracies for my liking in political thought these days. I think things are way simpler than that, which makes it scarier. But
We definitely bonded over the whole two-state growing up thing. That was an experience that we both had in kind of a similar way.
yeah,
And, when it happens to you in early development, it really shapes who you are and gives you a totally different perspective on things. It makes you grow up quicker and it makes you see things more clearly.
yeah, I think so. Like, it's not to say that you can't, if you don't travel, you're not gonna experience life or something, or get the best out of it. Like, there are great poets that never left like a single state in the United States and yet wrote like wonderful poetry that speaks to people all around the world. Like Lauren Niedecker is one of my favorite poets. She never left the state of Wisconsin, and she's like amazingly brilliant. And like what a mind, what a creative like mind she had. And I think about that too. People that just spend their life in Louisiana or Oklahoma or Arkansas. Like, I think a lot of times people, they'll give people that live in poverty in Africa the benefit of the doubt for political reasons, but they won't give, a guy in Arkansas who's also living in poverty. He's just an asshole or a Nazi that needs to be stopped or something. And I think it's just, I want to see a day where, like a blue Mohawk liberal is hanging out with the most racist guy in Arkansas, but somehow they find a reason to coexist. Because, like, until that day comes, it's just going to be this fucking, there's nothing war for no reason. Like,
I couldn't agree more. That actually leads nicely on to the next question. We all grew up in the same system, but it works for some people and not everyone. Would you describe yourself as someone for whom the system works or doesn't work?
I can't say that the system didn't work for me because I never felt like I was going under. But I'm also weird in the sense that I don't require much. So I'm pretty, like, I could do with very little. For instance, when I was doing the main, let's say, 5 years of AK Rockefeller, my part, I maybe had $100 a month for food. And this was like mostly in Vancouver, Canada, where food, can be a little expensive. Not always, some things, right? But $100 was not a lot. But I was eating a lot of the same shit, and then I remember somebody one day, just looking at my ramen collection and saying, "Oh, I remember the days of eating ramen. It was so horrible." And up until that point, I hadn't really even thought about it. That I was eating a lot of ramen. It was just what I could afford, and I didn't feel like I was suffering through it. I remember I bought a $50 used mattress. Was kind of beat up. It's not. I don't think it was even for sale. I think the guy was going to throw it out when I said, "Hey, I'll buy that one. How much?" Because I didn't really have enough for much of anything. I had two plates, two cups, you know. But I had an apartment. I just couldn't furnish it. But like I'm saying, and I was way too old to be living that. In society, people would have expected me to have moved up a notch by that point, but I was slumming it because I loved what I was doing, and I thought it was working. That it was actually helping people, so it was hard to stop, and it didn't matter much to me, the the downside of it. I mean, so I can't say the system didn't work for me because I never had a reason to complain.
That's interesting. That isn't the answer that I thought you would give. So, the whole focus of this is around trying to reconcile the reality that's portrayed at you versus what you actually know through your own experiences is the underlying reality. At what point in your life did you first experience that clash between those two things? So, in other words, when did you become aware that you thought differently about things than you were supposed to?
When did I first realize? I realized pretty young. I was like my earliest memories in kindergarten, first grade. I always felt, I don't know, different than the other kids. The other kids seemed so American, and I mean I was, in a way as American as they were. I mean we watched the same shows, watched the same sports, same movies, all that stuff, and I knew what was going on. But like I said, by that point I had already been in Poland like three times. So my earliest memories are also of my aunt in Warsaw and my dad's old friends. Who never left Poland, that we would go visit, like his old gang. And so when I was in America, I always felt like different. And I always felt like the weird kid anyway. Like I didn't feel like insults insulted me. It just seems stupid, like bullying. Like I was unbullyable. Like I didn't care. Like people would whatever, tease you or do whatever. I always sort of stood up for the bullied kids, and I felt like I was a kind of like my social status was either the least bullied kid or the least bullying bully. Like I was on the line of that. But I never felt, I always had like one good friend in any class, and then that's about it. I was never like a big social kind of thing. So I always felt different and isolated, and it's hard to, I think, in a sense, like when I met you at that particular time in my life when I was 16, and you had certain like abilities that I admired, like the ability to make great music and to really know what you were doing versus my sort of haphazard approach. So that sort of motivated me to learn more, and I did start taking guitar a little more seriously and the writing of songs a little more seriously. And I thought that's what I could do. That was good. Like that I would never be like a great guitar player, but if I worked hard enough, I would find the right changes and the right chords and words to make like an exciting song, or at least like a memorable song. And for a while there, I thought I, did pretty good at that.
I thought you did great, man.
And I sort of stopped making or writing songs when I started writing just more poetry and words. Like my lyrics started getting too abstract for music, and it didn't feel like it was about anything anymore. But that's when I started reading James Joyce and Shakespeare, and I found these, writers that really took language to the next level. Lawrence Stern, and I spent years studying all that and appreciating it, and trying to duplicate it as best I could, but never even coming close.
Obviously, outside of what happened with your mom, was your family like supportive of you having a different way of thinking about things? And
Well, I was mostly supported in my endeavors. I mean, I wasn't discouraged in any way, but in the sense that nobody was expecting me to go to college. And when I applied for college, mostly I was indecisive. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go. I sort of got talked into it because why not? They said, like, if you don't go, you just won't go. But if you go, maybe you'll like it and maybe it'll come to something. And if not, then you drop out and that's the end of it. Like, but I think it would have been better if I had been pushed a little. But at the same time, my dad only has a fourth grade education. So, he sees the world in his way. He's just some dude that grew up in the rubble of World War II in Warsaw, as you can imagine. So let's say in like 1951, he was 8 years old. So they were still like, digging up rocks and guns and shit. Like, those were not like great days in Poland. And he came to America, I believe, in 1961 or 63. In any case, he won his U.S. citizenship by signing up for the Vietnam War. And they said, if you'll get your citizenship, and when you come back, you'll get a good government job, which ended up being at the water department. So, my dad, never grew up very musical or artistic. Although I think he's got a very interesting artistic mind, he just never had a channel to use it. You see little things. He's a good tinkerer, and he'll make little improvements to little things he buys, like bolts or nails, or he'll rig something up really cleverly and quickly, like out of his own mind. And you say, "Where'd you come up with that?" And you go, "I don't know. I just I think he's got a good mind, but he never had somebody to push him into it, so he didn't know what that he could push somebody towards something better for their life. So I basically made the decision to go to college on a whim, and I had sort of a terrible time there, but I did learn a lot. I mean, even in like from my professors, I would always go just hang out and talk to the professors, which is just an easier way to do it than to sit in their classrooms. But once, like the professors there were good because once you show interest, they're happy to talk. I mean, they're sitting around bored waiting for people to come in and like challenge them, So, but, all the things I was recommended in college in terms of literature and philosophy were great. I just, dropped out of college and did it on my own. Eventually, I came across the line that somebody said, if you can read English, then you should never study English. You should just read. Like, you'll either get it or you don't.
that's great. Yeah, I love that. Was there a kind of pivotal moment that propelled you forward in your thinking, or more than one? I mean, you've kind of mentioned a few already, to be fair.
I mean, I could think of just one, just really quick one. Going to the MoMA for the first time on a field trip in probably 10th grade. I remember seeing Marcel Duchamp artworks there that I didn't know who he was. And, seeing like all those surrealist artworks, but specifically Marcel Duchamp. He made the bicycle wheel on a stool. He like bolted a bicycle wheel upside down on a stool. I thought that was hilarious. And then just the bride descending a staircase painting was It was like cubism, but it showed like this very kind of sexy movement. So, it was like the first painting I saw that was sort of static and active at the same time. And that always made an impression. And then reading about the guy, how his writings are really funny and impenetrable. And he was just a funny, smart dude. And also later I found out that he played chess for the French national team. He was a very strong chess player and actually abandoned art for many years just to study chess. He's not like an all-time great, but he was pretty strong. Yeah, and I recommend, and any biography of his. I think for any would-be artist is, you can't go wrong with that.
Noted. I've never read any, so I'll add that to the list. So I keep referring to cognitive dissonance. First of all, do you experience that in the way that I'm talking about? Having this reality constantly forced in your face, and you know that it's completely false, and you have to kind of reconcile it all the time.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, speaking to you here, I'm not sure I do feel cognitive dissonance in the way you're talking about, but I think it's only because I've been like working in this field for so long. And I think that I'm like super obsessed with, let's say, Queen Elizabeth spies and just little moments in history where, one message is being told the people and something else is happening, some kind of court intrigue is happening in the background. I'm interested in how even the artwork funnels into culture, how news reports funnel into culture, how news can be kind of real and unreal at the same time. What's really interesting to read is Jorge Luis Borges. His writing really covers a lot of this sort of ambiguity you're talking about between the real and the unreal, and stories, and how elements of stories can be true but not tell the truth. To me, like a wall of text, I take it for what it is and what, how you can use it. Like, it doesn't really bother me that presidents lie. I expect the lie. It's really what the lie is hiding. That it really is the news. And once you kind of plug in a little bit, and one good thing I'd recommend is read the news. If you're reading the news every day, read a foreign newspaper, because a lot of them come in English, but you'll see a different slant ever so slightly about all the topics you know. And, the thing is, if you live in a first world country, even if you read an Indian newspaper or a Chinese newspaper, they're going to talk about the things that happen to you that are local. But you'll get a different slant. Everybody's got a different, even if it's propaganda, it'll still be a different kind of propaganda. So you'll kind of learn what people expect, like what lie they expect, what truth they expect in their specific areas, what they're trying to hide, what's in play, like, and you'll see, who's, when somebody makes a move for something, and like they say, politics is war by other means. So everything's cool until a country wants something. Then it's all of a sudden, it doesn't matter what happened before. They could be poised to strike. So like you'll start seeing that, let's say Chinese incursions into the Indian Ocean. I've been following these for like 15 years, 20 years, actually. Little by little, China was going into the Indian Ocean and they were getting warned and warned and warned. And then finally they said, you know what, this is a new standard. We're going to come here. Don't stop warning us. And they did, because they didn't want to escalate. So, you'll see a lot of that from China in the next, 100 years. But, that's how I read the news. What's changed? Has the lie changed? Has the truth changed? Are things being buried? They were important yesterday. Today, nobody's talking about them. So I'm not saying that it's not the place where you start, but I don't know. I'm at a point now, like, I feel I've seen enough, and I've seen enough suffering, like, and I've talked to enough people that have suffered through political schisms, that turned violent, and like nothing kind of surprises me anymore. Like I just feel sad, when something's about to go down, like the Ukraine war. I just knew it was going to happen one day from a long time ago. So when it happened, the rest of the world was going, "Can you believe it?" And I was thinking, well, here it is. Like, I've been waiting for this for like 5 years. and it's going to be like at least 5 years before it's done. I remember, people were hopeful it would be over quick. And I said, no, the whole point of the war is the war, is like to keep bombing and dare people to, to tell you to stop. So, it's, yeah, I'm just not surprised anymore. I don't know what to tell you.
I can completely relate to everything that you just said. It's pretty much exactly the same experience that I have. And I've been reading foreign newspapers since as long as I can remember for exactly that reason. And I guess, yeah, I mean, for you and me, it's not about so much like that the cognitive dissonance bothers us or we're not aware of it, or I think we're both completely steeped in it and for such a very, very long time that it's just a sort of native part of our thinking. And I guess like it's not so much that you experience the cognitive dissonance and are confused by it. It's more that it's how do you stop it? And this is what the whole project is about, is sort of fighting against it, railing against the way these narratives are used to control people. And it's that really.
Like I've tried and I knew that, when we started AK Rockefeller, we weren't intending to go as far as we did with it. It was sort of like an intermediate project that we were starting while like something smaller while something bigger was brewing. But the thing is, it grew so fast, and the connections we made were so cool that we just decided to run with it, like because why not? And then it became like a kind of holy responsibility, that all of a sudden, when people are coming to you from the Papuan movement to ask you for favors, to help out with this or that, and I'm talking like kind of serious stuff. How could you say no? Like, why did you go there unless you were ready to go all the way? So at that point, like I was, committed to it, and that ate up another, 5 years easy. In a strange way though, like I look at the state of the internet now, and it's so different and so much worse than it used to be that, it's basically like the internet of old is gone. It is gone. And part of it was just having like competing social media websites where people can find their niches and find their people. But now it's really just bare bones. Like there's only a few places like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but you can't really do politics on Instagram. Not on this level.
Nah.
So, I mean, you have to post there, but it's just not even like half as good as some of the even crappy old social media sites. But they've systematically bought those out or destroyed them. Now the only ones that exist are like they're moderated to hell. Everybody feels like the shadow banning. I think, like we speak of shadow banning, but basically everybody is shadow banned on YouTube. You're only shown a fraction of what you can see at any one time. Like it's all hidden, and there's really no way around it. Like the search function is broken, especially on mobile. It's awful. Like they don't show you anything controversial, even if it abides by all their standards.
Yeah, absolutely. After all of that, do you like still feel empowered to make a difference? I think you said at the very beginning that everybody can make a difference. That I completely subscribe to that as well.
I always, use this motto that I read in some old book from the 1600s. Nobody can say what nobody is capable of. And that's kind of become my motto, is you can be somewhere that makes a difference. You can make one, kind gesture that makes a difference. I think, in a lot of ways, people aren't, they kind of don't want to do the work. Like it's funner to protest. It's funner to scream and hold a sign and say "fuck you, pig." But it's a lot harder to just do something locally, like start a group, meet in person, talk to people. Go, when somebody's running for election locally, walk into their little campaign office and ask a question or two. And if if you're for them, if those are your people, help them. Like learn about it from the inside. Hand out some flyers. Maybe you'll see something that is interesting that could get involved, and things will happen. Meet somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody else. Like it's only through networking. And look, I've never worked in the corporate world, and I'm not this networking in that sense, guru or anything like that. But and I'm not the most social person, so I know that people have trouble with it. But you got to find somebody, and if you're passionate politically, express that in some way, and not by screaming at somebody. Have a normal, quiet conversation and try to explain your feelings. And if you're wrong, be wrong. It's better to be wrong than never to change. Like learn things, like try to, fail better. That's as whatever the scientists say. Don't be afraid to challenge your thoughts. Don't be afraid to read what you don't agree with. In fact, it's more valuable to read what you don't agree with than what you already do agree with. You have to have answers to other people's arguments. You can't just say, well, I know because I'm smart. That changes nothing. When you actually get down to where the pedal, to when the decisions are made. I'm thinking of the East Timor Action Network, ETAN, which was a group kind of like AK Rockefeller, but just more legit and a little earlier. They were worried about East Timor's independence from Indonesia, which West Papua is seeking independence from Indonesia now. And they were able to accomplish that, just a few guys in a room and with some telephones and just playing phone tag with some people. But, if you hang around long enough, you'll see something big happen. And I'm talking like in a little room full of three people and a computer, So if you want to find that place, like those places are there, like you got to make yourself available and it'll be hard, but you'll make a difference. I promise you. Look, and I'm being purposely vague here on a lot of things because I don't want to inject my personal politics into this very political conversation because we all have our beliefs and our views and we all have our information and our stats ready to go that prove everything you think is right. But that's not how things happen. The UN issues reports all the time that are correct. Even the State Department of the United States is a great source of information, and the reports are very fair and very balanced. But that doesn't mean the politicians are going to listen to them. They have their own interests, whatever, So you're not going to change anything by not getting involved. And you're not going to change anything by screaming in somebody's face. So what are you going to do now? That's my plea to the world.
Solid. Mine is not dissimilar. For me, the elephant in the room in terms of how to change things is to teach more people how they're manipulated through narratives and stories. I mean, have you found that in your work? Because, again, for you and I, it's almost innate at this point. We've developed those tools from early on. But I think just a lot of people don't get it.
It's difficult, but I think really the best way to do that is through visual arts, movies and television. But movies and television have been they've really gone down in quality and just diversity, really, of thought. I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but they've just been they've plain sucked. There used to be a lot of controversial movies that came out, even in the mainstream, that, even like a movie like JFK, let's say in the 90s, it spoke openly about a potentially wackadoodle conspiracy theory, took it completely seriously, took the players completely seriously. I'm not talking about if it's right or wrong. I mean, everybody's going to have their opinion on those things. And it's the JFK assassination. So, I mean, everybody's got a different way of looking at it. But the fact that a film like that could come out, I just don't think in these days, it would just be impossible. And that's a shame. And it was a mainstream money-making movie. That wasn't some art house project or anything like that. That was big studio bucks were this is all right. So I would at least like to get back to a place like that because I think that's where the average Joe is having the conversation. It's around centers around just new shows and new movies that actually say things that are interesting and thought provoking. And that's where you're gonna, It's in the 90s, you had Malcolm X, the movie. Like, they would never make Malcolm X, the movie now. And it's supposed to be woke and shit, or, these days. But where is it? Like, where's the Martin Luther King Jr. biopic? There's infinite things that, like, we just exited this kind of golden age of media in the 2000s and maybe early 2010s, that there was so many, like, quality shows and movies of all types. And Hollywood has been very locked down. The kind of Far East is even like, little by little, their movies are doing better in the West, and their market means more to Western filmmakers. So things are sort of shifting slowly in that regard. And, we're not really putting our best foot forward culturally. Our movies are anemic. They're not about anything. Like, they're not allowed to be about anything. God forbid something actually happens in one of the movies.
I don't know if you're aware of the more recent phenomena that's going on, where these YouTubers are making really, really hugely successful films outside of the Hollywood system on a shoestring budget.
Like this movie, was it Obsession?
Yeah, Obsession and Backrooms also.
I haven't seen it, but supposedly it made crazy big money. It was a good movie, and it was like relatable to people. Like, it wasn't some kind of rehash based on shit that happened 40 years ago. It was like,
I did see it. It was actually very refreshing, and just the fact that could happen is encouraging.
Mm-hmm. And Backrooms,
Yeah, Backrooms is the other one. I've not seen that one yet, but I do want to see it. Just for the fact that they managed to pull that off is quite something, and it shows just how hungry people are for something different.
Yeah, and people always say when one of their big productions fails, they'll always say, well, people don't want to go to the theater anymore. But if a good movie comes out, they will go. And maybe you're spending way too much money on movies.
From that point of view, other than that third space that films and TV can be when you have that shared cultural currency, outside of that, do you think there's somewhere we could put our energies to try and help people see things for how they truly are more? I've tried to do it through music and through the podcast, through all these things that I do in little ways. But I'm still searching for the next thing, like where to put energies.
Yeah, I would say go analog.
Yeah, this is what I'm thinking too.
Like, I kind of almost recently been thinking of just like publish like a zine like people used to.
That's literally what I'm pushing to do. I'm fundraising to try and do this, or we are with the podcast.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, fuck this. I'm going to just do a quarterly zine and not send a fucking newsletter and not put anything on social media. Yeah, fingers crossed, man. You should definitely get involved in that if it happens.
Yeah, I also just got a fridge magnet maker.
Yes.
So I want to make some very surreal fridge magnets and hand them out at concerts or something.
That's awesome. We're not doing live shows anymore, unfortunately. They might come back. But the last thing I did for the live show was I got this like LED display thing, like they used to have in shops. It's just the endless scrolling messages. So I got one of these from 2001, and I had AI write a script for it about like, AI is like gone back into it and is trying to liberate people from cognitive dissonance, basically. It took me like 3 hours to program it. You had to do it with this remote control. I was so proud of that. It was on stage with us.
Nice.
But yeah, that didn't change the world.
How many people were in Fold?
Well, it's a long story, really. There's like 4 core members so that we could play live. There would at least be 4 people kind of always involved with the stage show, but we've had so many collaborators over the years. So it's like this, I call it a collective because of that, because it's involved so many different people, both willingly and unwillingly, because we've sampled so many voices.
Yeah. That was one of the things with AK Rockefeller. Like, it was a collective, whether you liked it or not.
Yeah.
If I liked your art, I would just find a way to use it somehow.
Exactly. We've sampled, God knows how many people. I'm working on a track at the moment with Carl Rogers. Have you ever heard of Carl Rogers?
No.
The humanistic psychologist, like one of the sort of forefathers of humanistic psychology. He's awesome. It's a lecture from 1967 about his belief that the facilitation of learning is the real aim of education, not just like teaching people shit.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard of like concepts like that, probably stemming from his work. I'm sure, at least have a cursory understanding. And when I was in NASA Community College, I had like a literature teacher there, And she gave me like a giant box of her like life's work. It was like Finnegan's Wake for a teacher. It was just this giant box. It was
Wow.
totally inappropriate, but it was all about pedagogy and like teaching methods. But at that time I wasn't familiar with this kind of stuff. But it was all wackadoodle shit, and kind of like how modern teaching has gone. Because while we want to destroy narratives or reveal narratives, better narratives for our way of life and stuff, and explore new avenues. There are people in academia who like solely want to destroy and tear things down and don't believe that things are really things and people are really people, and just want to sort of play around in it. So a lot of bullshit that comes out of academia, it's been out there. It's like a slow train coming, and it's finally arrived. So we're going to have to deal with this, kind of bullshit for a while. Yes, it's like politicians lie and statistics can lie, but you still need them to understand what's happening, right? And you can't just, have your own statistics and start making decisions based on partial information. And sometimes that's hard to do because, like I said, it's easier to stand in the street and scream at somebody or like throw algae into a reflecting pool. Like, yeah, that's fun and everything, right? It's like a funny meme, but that's the behavior that got us in this position in the first place.
Couldn't agree more. On that note, I've got one last question,
Sure.
which I'm borrowing from one of my other favorite podcasts, Universe Today. I'm a little bit obsessed with cosmology and shit. What are you currently obsessed with?
My electric tricycle.
Oh, yeah, you were telling me a little bit about this.
I have an electric trike. People may not know I'm sort of handicapped. I walk with a cane. It's difficult to walk. But I knew I needed to find reasons to get out and exercise more. So I bought this electric trike. And it's just the greatest thing, and I'm like mobile again. I don't drive a car. I never have. I don't know why. I decided very young that I would never drive a car. I just never had an interest. I don't like them. I don't care for them. People who like cars can fuck off. I hate hearing about them.
I can't stand them, man, and I hate driving, but I have to do it.
I don't think there's really a reason for them. It should all be buses and trams and shit. That's really the better way to do it. But, these electric bikes, more and more people in my neighborhood have been driving them. I just kept seeing them, and I just decided, hell, I'm going to get it. But, I got bad balance and a bad back and stuff. So I just wanted the extra wheels for stability. Yeah, that's what I love. I just love driving around. I go to this cemetery all the time. It's a good place to drive around and read the funny names on the rocks.
I've been doing that with my kids since they were little.
There's like a Revolutionary War hero buried in this cemetery near me, and he doesn't have a plot, but they have like a road sign with his name on it. It's like a normal like no parking here sign for New York. They gave him that instead of a headstone.
That's really emblematic of where our civilization is at. You remember that song we wrote, The Sun Shines Out My Asshole?
Yes.
I mean, it
Oh, man.
wasn't a very nice thing to do for a mutual friend, but we had our reasons at the time.
Yeah, I do actually sing that in my head from time to time. From under cheese all over these fingers. Yeah, that's definitely like in my playlist in my head.
For my internal ears only. Thanks for coming on, man. It's been really, really good to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been great, and I appreciate talking to you, and I like what you're doing, and I'm going to be listening.
Awesome. All right, man. We'll talk again soon.
Rock and roll.